Hello, everybody, and welcome to another talk. Today, I'm going to welcome back Dr. Venkata Narayana Joshi, a previous teacher of mine. And if you go back on the previous videos, you'll see we spoke. I mean, how long ago was it? Did we speak maybe 2 months ago, something like that? I can't.
Yes,
It was
exactly.
fairly recently, but we covered a lot of material in that talk, and there's so many things I wanted to ask Dr. Joshi, and we just didn't have time. So I thought it would be nice to do a follow-up today, and we'd spoken briefly on some herbs last time, and I wanted to go a little bit more into depth with him on this one. So what we've done is we've kind of dedicated one just to we just picked a handful of herbs, other than no particular reason other than they're ones that I use a lot or I like, or I just happen to have good images for them, but they're just intriguing anyway. I mean, it's like you could pick there's so many herbs you could pick and talk about. They're all interesting and they all have their various uses, but we just thought we'd kind of go through a few of those and just speak about them. And it would be from the point of view of, some of the experiences I'd had or Dr. Joshi's experience with working with them in the past. So, anyway, so welcome back, Dr. Joshi. Thank you for coming again. Appreciate you taking the time to do this. So,
Namaste.
when we look at when you get any Ayurvedic book, you buy any book off the shelf, you've obviously got a herbal section and people kind of look through that and they're all sort of fascinating. I mean, I guess what I did was my own experience was just to look at formulas, individual formulas, and try and figure out why they worked and why those particular herbs had been used. So for me, it was a process of actually buying them as raw herbs, which I always like to do. I tend not to like using powders because powders I'm always a bit suspicious of because I sort of think, well, it could be anything in there. I'd never know. So if you get the raw herb, and then it was just basically recreating these formulas and actually watching what they were doing, preparing the decoctions, and then adding them. So I mean, when you were studying, when you were back when you were studying, you were a student. I mean, how much of that is that the way that it was taught? I mean, it's such a huge topic. I guess I'm asking, how did you get an inroad into learning about herbs? How do they do it? What's the best way to understand how all these herbs work?
I mean, from Ayurveda point of view, when we see natural resources, when they are classified from vegetarian point of view, in a way, like how much is the food as a medicine-based ingredients available? Because 30 to 40% of kitchen pharmacy, which comes out through from our spices and commonly routine use substances. So I know the potency of the substances which are, the equivalent species what are available or the right sources of information. Around 120 important herbs we used to be encountering in routine from the Samhitas when you look into with different synonyms, and then the grouping them to it can be extended with the pharmacopoeia. Around now 500 plus are being taught, so as an added value for the natural resources. So the substances, when they're divided on the basis of like wholesome, on the three aspects of either it is exclusively wholesome or exclusively unwholesome.
Mm,
In between, which are working are the energies based. The classification on the basis of like constitutionally based, dosha based, conditional based, whether it is for the healthy people to use or being ill. So that's the way the classification continues. Swastha Vrutta Matam Dravyam. It is that how the
mm,
restorative herbs, which will be enhanced by adaptogenic properties and as well as from more rejuvenating properties, you can say, and longevity based ingredients. And as you rightly said, knowing them individually and try to understand the combinations thereafter. And that is where we are in UK with the Medicines and Healthcare Regulatory Agency, which is being allowed onto the over-the-counter products of single herbs at the moment, or just possibly one or two combinations and permutations to understand how this synergy works from compatibility being raised from liquid substances. So it's as you said, it's very vast. The substances are being classified into three groups of Ayurveda. The energetics based equivalent, as energies are understood from Ayurveda. So when you say what is energy, in a way, like you look from omnipresence and omnipotent way of the energetic value is like sun influencing or the moon influencing. These are the two major distinct climatic environmental basis of plant or any growth on the planet of Earth itself. So when the moon is much influential on the parts of these herbs and the higher mountains like in Himalayas, and then the apparent clarity of this moonlight influence a lot of fight mechanisms. Say, for example, like alkaloids or glycosides or bitter active ingredients, or even the morphological features of these plants growing with lots of thorny and as well as self-protective, becoming bitter.
Mm.
So these active ingredients or being other than from the nutritional content for these plants is acquired as a self-protective means or adaptogenic means or survival means or sustaining or then from sustaining or protecting themselves from invasion like microbes or insects and animals even. So that is the way nature has created a great distinction. Only Ayurveda can understand this. Say, for example, how this moonlight is influenced for defense mechanism,
Mm.
been enriched in this plant kingdom, and then vice versa from the hot sun. We all know from the chloroplast and synthesis of food chain, and that is the way the energy transmission into the plants. So from the sun and moon, hot and cold, as a basis of potential differences to understand any identity of the herb at the beginning, then extensively go with all the qualities. In Ayurveda, around 41 qualities are being enlisted to understand subjective and objective criteria on the basis of organic, inorganic, or life, or with the sensory means of the growth and development of this life, or this insensitive, the creation, what we can see by Panchamahabhutas, we can say. So that is the way I understand these therapeutics or involved around with living or non-living basis of the resources available extensively from Ayurveda point of view. Yes.
Mm. Mm.
So we can see huge vast information on these.
When you were working with these initially, then were you kind of using more? Would you go and just get them harvest them fresh, or would you just go?
Yeah, it's always. Then in the past, it was like more into the nature and then natural resources or diversity, ecological balance, and collection of the herbs is also based on natural vicinity that has naturally high potency and value. When we start cultivating more and more, I know it is a little bit of quality compromise into the cultivation, and
Mm.
still, if it is an organic, still we have a lot of value for our health to restore from these natural substances being procured. So that was a wonderful thing, and we used to have these botanical trekking and tours and all over India and in the forests and from north to south to identify the distinction of the flora and fauna. So that's the way identity based differentiation of the species and being how much is being used, and moreover it is an added value for traditional systems, because recently I saw some news coming out in United Arab Emirates about the Siddha Vaidyas. Ayurveda is a part of course, is a mother science which evolved through from Vedic knowledge, but then the Siddha is from southern point of view, or from the people from Sri Lankan point of view, or people who came from Bengal point of view. So
Mm.
the traditional richness of these Vaidyas and folklore Vaidyas, because they were studying as an inheritance coming through in their families as a hierarchy, we can say.
Mm.
Institutionalized studies now and the graduations, and then the hierarchy coming through in the families running, and this knowledge is the same. And they have this then compatible, wonderful synergistic formulations where they are used and generations are being passed. That's being accepted in United Arab Emirates now. It's a
You
big
were talking
awareness.
about like the solar and the lunar principle there. That I was just wondering how much of that goes back to that. those family lineages as well. You said that, the families are coming through like the solar and the lunar lineages. So is there something?
Absolutely right. You
Yeah, yeah.
see this is a living, and then the generations, as you said, in between is what? In between is a I mean, like a changing environment. From the sun to the moon, the influence is the clouds or the environment or the atmosphere. How
Mm,
it is being rays are being infiltrated, what are the useful things from the sun, and the radiation is being avoided with the ozone protection.
mm,
Whatever we see, that is a mechanism of acceptance. So similarly, the values are there in those natural vicinity, and then these values have to be accepted into our bioenvironment. So
mm,
that's the way the bioenvironment creation is something like Vata Ayurveda, it's being said.
mm,
So this atmosphere is working as a sphere which can accept and reject the outrightly through from the putting into the mouth to smelling, or
mm,
even tasting and smelling, and then digestion, absorption and assimilation, and then metabolizing to the point of view. It's a huge science
mm.
what acceptability is considered as a barriers, and that
Oh,
is where the physical to the physiology is a wonderful subject to understand this exploration of natural principles in Ayurveda.
maybe a month ago, I hadn't made it in a long, long time, but I went and made a batch of the Dashamula Thailam, so the Dashamula oil. And I remember at the time we spoke briefly on the phone. I was just trying to locate these things just to get these 10 roots, and in the end it was a compromise. I think I got 7 of the 10. The last three were just so difficult to get. And I remember saying to you at the time, I thought, well, the 3 that I wasn't able to procure, could you maybe think of some substitutes? But you said actually it's better to use the 7 that you were able to get, and keep the formula as true as possible, rather than. So, if you get a formula like that, what would be your take on, let's say you're putting together a fairly complex formula and you had some herbs missing, would you always just try and use what you had and then not look outside of that? Or would you consider using some Western herbs where you thought, okay, it's got a similar energetic, I might be able to substitute that, but there's no history of doing that, so I don't know what the effect is going to be. So how would you attack that kind of problem?
Yes, then we have so much of distinction as we have to understand that you see the difference of these potential energies working onto this plant kingdom. More number of species, 25,000 species minimum, into the point of a starting point of the tropical belt of this, the vegetative and enlisted. And there's so much of thousands of species which may be unknown. But then the thing is that as it is extreme into the temperate zones, as being into the northern or southern hemisphere, as we're going, the limitedness of these species which do carry those values of therapeutics. That is the reason, because extremely it is cold or extremely it is in the pockets. In a way, like hot and cold balance should be there.
Mm,
And that way, if we see, it's wanted to see the replacement or the equivalent properties. For example, in UK, we have the Vastukam,
mm,
Chinopodium alba, and that is the Vastuka Shaka, Chinopodium alba, which is less known to the people that it is edible.
mm.
And then everywhere you can see into the gardens and as well as local
Just
vicinity,
growing
this
everywhere.
plant grows. It's a wild spinach. And then how this spinach has a greater value, because it's coming from the Vedic knowledge, Vedic text, and Vedic enrichment, enlisted the species, Vastu Kashakam, which is considered to be the most colon friendly for the people who are having suffering with constipation, to the IBS, and as well as yeah, and then the richness of this bacterial flora or microbiome is being restored by using this vegetable in salad forms to the cooked dal preparations, and whichever the way we did these practicals, if you remember. Of course, I was showing also in Germany the kakamachi. Last time we talked about Solanum nigrum as well. So
Mm,
there are so many species which are growing in UK and Europe, exactly the same species what Ayurveda has used. So
mm,
we have to understand them, and then try to come to the quality wages. There are so much of literature books are also being based on the taste balances understood. Say, for example, taste threshold examination. This
Mm.
taste threshold test may be like a subjective, but still it can be validated onto the percentage point of view. For example, 10 volunteers having a substance is being given in a uniformity of this, like a sample dose, and the sample dose coming from whether it is the bark or the leaves or the root or 10 aspects of this plant flora, irrespective of that, whether it is dissolved, how much is that the raw material substance as it is recommended or collected from Ayurveda point of view to be used, fresh or dry,
Mm.
and then dissolve into the unit of the, like distilled water. So that what is that amount of the dissolvement into the distilled water disappears the taste into the volunteers as a testimony. So this is the way, a simpler basis of the organoleptic method of subjective validation for the taste preferences, or what is the prime taste you notice it.
It'll always, the primary thing you're always going for really is like, is it
Taste
interesting or is it
preferences.
cooling? That's like the primary
Yeah.
focus. And then after that, other considerations, but primarily it's something hot and cold, which goes back
Yeah.
to the sort of sun and moon thing again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That way, yes. When you put in the something in the mouth, it's so spicy and pungent, and
Mm.
easily we can understand it is a solar principle, which
Mm.
is very hot,
Mm.
and straight away from the mouth. And that is the way to understand bitterness is there, or spicy thing is there, and as well as astringent is there,
Mm.
or sweet is there, sour is there. But then preferences, what is that first taste you find predominance,
Mm.
and then also while chewing or experiencing or dissolving with the saliva, and you might get other taste also as an adjuvant also you can find. So understanding the primary taste, predominant taste. Predominance is how long the taste
Mm.
sustain. For example, licorice is there. When you put this licorice in the mouth, and it will the sweetness taste loss for longer time.
Mm.
So this is the intensity of the taste sweet is very high.
Mm.
Then we can say simply put like a 3 plus, because it's a sweetest. When you say sweet, sweeter, sweetest,
Yeah.
roughly to say, in a way you grade into the 3 levels and understand intensity of the taste, then the therapeutics are going to be based on this intensity.
Mm.
If it is too much of sweetest, then it has a greater affinity, which can be accepted. Say, because from the configuration of the elemental point of view, the water element and the earth element
Mm.
in predomination make it as a sweet taste.
Mm.
Then the sweetness with the water and earth gravitational pull, that will be moving and regulating the peristalsis.
Mm.
So this is the way, one-way traffic. From mouth to end is a one-way traffic.
I remember when I was a kid, you used to quite often go into health, well, sort of health food stores, if you like, the natural foods, and quite often you'd have the licorice sticks there, and you could just buy them and chew them, and
Yes,
that was like a
yes.
we really liked that. I mean, I've never seen that as recent.
Because the throat, and
Mm.
the throat getting clear with this all this mucus formation, and the voice, the speech getting better and better. So
Mm.
it's a kantya. So
Mm.
the predominance, the efficacy onto this throat, that means into the exocrine endocrine system of this, the areas which are working through, and it can also generate as a metabolic restorative by acting on thyroid hormone as well, we can say. So that's the way presumptions on the basis of the qualities and preferences where this system is worked.
The sort of best way to experience all these is just to try them anyway. I mean, always try and get your own sense of what they're doing. Just taste it on the tongue and see what sort
Yeah.
of action you're getting, and just feel for your.
Because taste is the first thing in the life starts also, then the baby crawling.
Yeah.
Everything it is first experiment is just put in the mouth. It
Yeah.
doesn't know anything, just try to taste it.
Yeah.
That's
Just
the
taste
way the
it.
life has come up with this interest of, that's the taste rasa in Ayurveda. And said rasa is that the interesting subject. It's interesting. What
Mm.
is it makes it more interesting is the taste.
Mm.
And taste preference, taste adaptations, and taste recommended growth and development from childhood as a practices in Ayurveda. That's the way the taste acceptance is also growing.
Yeah, so rasa is like a big part of, well, it's the primary. It's like the beginning of the dhatus. It's like it's starting the process. It's emoliating. It's getting everything dissolved, and so it's like such a big part of this process, isn't it? The initial taste of something is is the
Well,
myth.
you said rasa because it's a rasyate, aswadyate, anena iti rasaha. Rasa is whether you say the emotional mind expressing its content by visualizing, say your facial expression is a means of communication.
Mm,
And then the nine aspects of these communications, navarasa. When you
mm,
say nine aspects, because whether you are fearful, happy or sorrow or angry, or you can express through. This
mm,
is rasa. When you said in Sanskrit called rasa, nava rasa. So that's the way, whether it is a life in expression or life in acceptance from the taste and life in thriving to grow all these seven tissues of our strength, rasa, dhatu.
mm,
And then also the rasa, rasyate, coming through from the mineralogy point of view, the mercury stands as the
mm.
rasa
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
a synonym. So multiple levels of these acceptances from the
That which
dhatu.
supports, it's like the column that holds everything in place. So it's like everything is dependent upon that sort of central support.
Yes.
So it's a good way to think about
Or
it.
life support, yeah, I can say.
Let's have a look at some of these some herbs. Just out of interest, I suppose it would be a good one to start. We've already mentioned licorice, so let's kind of. What about Sariva? You know, the Indian sarsaparilla.
Yeah, Sariva, Indian,
I always
Sarsaparilla.
think I
Yeah.
know it's not licorice, but I always kind of like think it's a similar sort of thing.
Yeah, because you see, something is by taste when you put in the mouth, but then something is also an aroma which comes out through the smelling it. And then this aroma, like Sarsaparilla, Hemidesmus indicus, Sariva, Anantamula, it's a wonderful root because the flavor, when you see in the market, everywhere by name Iremusu, and they are marketing from Sri Lanka because the unique taste flavor after the tea into the tea as an infusion,
Mm,
nothing but this root.
mm,
And the anti-accident properties, antiviral properties, or alkalizing properties of this blood, and affinity towards the liver and the hepatopancreas, hepatobiliary system, and a flavor for the strength of the sensory nervous system. So it is antiviral, which is being understood, antifungal, so antimicrobial and blood cleansing, alkalizing and healing. And because after the heart, it is the liver which has to take up the multitask of these metabolic functions, which it restores by Sariva.
mm.
Sariva, Anantamula, Gopakanya, all these names are there because extensively the roots are spreading under the ground, and which is a typical wonderful aroma present in there. So everybody loves to have this as a Iremusu tea, and which is alkalizing and health benefits. And skin diseases, you talk about neurological conditions and immunomodulating substance, and then supporting the liver functions and much more.
I was going to say
Yeah.
because of it, you know, the aerial roots that's sort of sending out everywhere. That's another reason why it's kind of like Vajikarana, like for
Yeah.
procreation,
This
because it's many
the
children.
Rasayana Vajikarana is an extensive applications in a formulations about that individually. We can say that even though it is not a longevity promoting herb
Mm,
in Ayurveda point of view,
mm,
but it is a very cooling energy herb for the brain and senses and nervous system and immunomodulation and for alkalinity of the blood and skin diseases and supporting for liver functions, hepatitis conditions, so
mm.
jaundice and fatty liver, so much conditions, alcoholic liver. So it's a wonderful tea for these, to infuse and use it in powder form. And then compound formulations, as you said, it will be a part plays role in multiple, rejuvenative properties later on. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when you put it into a tea, you just did a chai for the students one morning. You know, we were kind of in between two preparations, and you kind of made this chai.
Yeah, A2
Just a
milk
little,
and then this
just a little
saliva
bit of
with the.
sarsaparilla in it made it completely different. It was amazing. So the route that we're buying mostly over here, or we're available, is just coming more from Sri Lanka or more from India.
Both the countries and tropical countries mostly. Yeah, it grows in all these tropical belts, and sariva does not grow in UK, and you haven't seen in Europe, which is growing. But a little bit of loose alluvial soil, and then much open lands, not just in the muddy land, it does grow, wetlands it grows.
Mm.
So that has its own retaining aroma coming through in the loose soil. Yes. So all aromatic substances in Ayurveda are the flavoring substances which retain and sustain the formulations for longevity, which will not spoil, and that way, yeah. There are several formulations where Anandamula salva is also one of the ingredients.
I mean,
We can
there are
say.
so many you could just sort of. It's difficult to focus down on anything because they're all good in a way. But obviously, we've just tried to pick a few that we thought or that we all talked about a little bit today. So another one I was interested in was I put frankincense, but it's gums and resins of. I find all those gums really interesting, like the Googaloos and the cotton tree resins, and I mean all those things are fascinating. I mean, maybe you could just talk a little bit about Ayurveda's
Yeah,
approach to
there's another
gums.
part. Yeah, I mean, like resins and gums and exudates which are coming through from the plant, because
Mm,
we can see that when the tree, for as you said, Gugulu, because in the Kutch and Ran, when we used to study in Jamnagar and the desert lands, and these Gugulu plants are thriving and growing, because of this intense heat from the sun,
mm,
and this the plant the bark cracks on its own and start the golden milk exudating, dribbling
mm,
down. Of course, we have like five types of variations of these gum resinous substances based on the color and consistency. Maishaksha Gugulu, Kumuda Gugulu, Kana Gugulu, all these names are there. But then this exudate or the gummy resinous substances, gum kino, gum katira, gum karaya, gum arabica, all
mm,
these different gums, edible gums most of the times. Then the irrespective of any gum, which is as a sandhana. Sandhana means like as an energy which minimize the wear and tear process based on the certain gums which are restoratives and healing perspective, and as well as being more aromatic is into the sensory nervous system, restoratives from nervous system, and anti-inflammatory.
mm,
Gugulu is anti-inflammatory, and when you see this Gugulu is energized, potented again with this Triphala decoctions and fortifying it, and then it starts differently. When the Gugulu getting older and older, it's
mm,
getting more into rejuvenating properties, restorative,
mm,
longer and longevity based, tissue repair functions and inflammations. So
mm,
actively reducing inflammations and then restoring later on when it's getting older or being fortified with either different herbs into it.
mm. Is that like a googler? Is it a little bit? It's got like that lake and that kind of scraping action. You feel when you take
Yes.
it actually, even when you've got it on the tongue and you swallow the saliva with it in, you almost feel like it's sort of scraping. It's got like a kind of scraping action.
Yeah, Lekhana is that's the word which is being used to say additional growths when they are starting, and fibrin excess of accumulations into this microcapillary level, and they have to be removed from those, and then otherwise the structural variations do occur when functions are being thrown up. A lot of rubbish is being collected, and that's the way the cleansing through this is because nerve and artery when they're conjoined together, and that's the way the most communications on the basis of exchange is taking place, and that allows that excess of oxygen and the antioxidant properties microcapillary level. Based on this was the Gugulu, Panchatikta Gugulu Grutam,
Mm,
which is being prepared and fortified with bitterness, because bitterness is as a part of cleansing and more working onto this microcapillaries, anastomosis or reticuloendothelial level to restore, and debris is being taken out, and that way the Gugulu resolution or inflammation, edema is being reduced by those, and restoring these harder structures like the joint and cartilages and supporting for health as well. So the gums and resins together with the aromatic principles present in it,
mm,
either they are reducing the acute inflammations or restoring the nervous communication functions, or being eliminating the waste material out of these microcapillaries, and thus the lubrication and functionality of the joints or the vital organ systems are being restored. So multiple functions, that's the way it is being said as a rejuvenation the
mm.
Gugulu is.
Mm.
So the triphala is, of course, the most important ingredient to be conjuncted at the beginning with it, and then the dasamulas, and then so many other herbs are being used into. When you say the kanchanara, as you said, kanchanara
Ashnara, yeah,
guggulu,
that's a very popular one.
anti-inflammatory properties,
Yeah.
and there are so many, because that's the bark and decoctions are being processed along with these guggulu resins and gums. So plant exudations, and they are very and also, as I said, sandhana, because it start giving strength to this upper part of this body where the kapha, where above diaphragm, and
Mm.
then that kapha has to be pure, and then it's like a good cementing substance, and cohesive energy is being built by the use of these substances, and anabolic activating when it is new, and then the restorative when it is old.
We were talking about, I remember we'd spoken before about the when to purify and when not to purify. So traditionally, most Google goes through a purification or Shodana process. So it will be either steamed or boiled in triphala decoction. And then there's this kind of process where it's mixed with ghee. Sometimes it's fried, sometimes it's not. I mean, what's the general rule for purification of Google, say?
I
Is
have
it
seen when the Google is collected on its own and well preserved in the non-reactant containers over a long period of like 1 year as a minimal period of more than 2 years, it's getting better and better
mm,
as it's getting older and older. Purana Google, but then I've also seen the pounding or when the heat being applied for breaking or mixing with any substances, or also use it from the plant material jute.
mm,
The jute cloths are being used so that the the aromatic principles should be retained in it, not to get too much of altered by heating,
mm.
overheating. So that's the way that what it is being added, or even the own gugulu on its own, when you can mix it with the triphala and then get it, and highly retained aromatic principles can be used because it's old. When it is new, it will be more pungent and sharp and very intense. It might cause the like blisters, of course, because of this pitta constitution or too much of heat generated, and that may be burning. Otherwise, when it is older or mixed with this triphala, and it will reduce that intensity, and then put into more therapeutic benefit rather than it's intensely producing
Mm.
any breaching into this mucous or epithelial or sensitive
Again, it
mucous
was
membrane.
like one of the principles of actually just getting down and using your stuff rather than talking about it. I mean, when I first did it, I boiled and prepared. I mean, it's incredibly messy stuff, but if you know what you're doing and you do it methodically and you do it all with heat and you keep everything clean, it's quite manageable. But for the first time that you actually experience purifying Google, I mean, just everything gets sticky. I mean, it's sort of the cloth sticky, your hands sticky, the pot sticky. But you learn a sort of technique to be able to do it, and it's quite. I was watching them in India. They're quite interesting. They would sort of just steam it, and then they would put ghee, smear ghee on a wooden board, and then they would just sort of hand sort it, pull out the bits of twigs and leaves, and but of course the ambient temperature is so warm there. Everything kind of works. If you do it in a Western climate, I mean, literally the ghee just starts to set, and it all ends up as this horrible sort of mess. So there's a certain it's one of those materials which is better suited to the Indian climate,
In
definitely.
that same environment when you're preparing. I saw in Germany as well when you're doing it. But when this flavor and aroma, well, boiling with this potli yantra, and then you can see the smell intensity. The smell itself is healing perspective for you to understand this gukulu affecting on health. So
Mm.
this is a wonderful substance. All
You
these
can you
resins
can
and
burn it,
gums.
can't you? You can just burn it as an incense as well. There's got a quite
Yeah, you
a
can.
aromatic.
Frankincense when you're burning it, and it's what the environment is getting pure, and I know microbial eliminations, and as well as not only just microbial elimination and anti-microbial activity, but it is immensely through the nasal system and working through into the brain, and all the sensory restoratives are perient nervous.
We
Uh,
should say also like in frankincense, like
yeah.
incense. I mean, these are the sort of basis of many of these. In fact, I was going to ask you about that. What about substances, other resins, say like the Bateria indica? The resin, which is, or is it Ral or something they call it, or Sal Ral? Like I can't remember the name, but basically it's burnt as an incense. But the aroma is amazing. It's like a really beautiful balanced
the aroma hidden under this when the plants are being under the earth as a crystallized and then coming out as a mineral source, or the plant origin being extracted or being collected. So either of these aromatic substances when they collectively burn. Another important thing is like the what you call like sensory modulation therapies for this mental health.
mm,
So if people with artistic syndrome, artistic disorders, and as learning, growing children, because when the baby is born in Ayurveda, they wanted to see up to the 45 days of this peripheral care, and all these aromatic substances are being burnt and fumigated. The whole room is fumigated, in fact. So it's burning in sense, and it's an auspicious thing to
mm,
see that how the brain programming, mental and sensory brains, the health is restored by smell itself.
mm.
Yeah, from in multiple levels, of course, from the mother, when these fumigation treatments in Ayurveda is being done, is also like taking the lokia, is the waste material out after the labor, that's cleansing the womb as well. So
Mm,
that's multiple levels, it works.
mm.
And wanted to see these aromatic substances. And we are using more into edible gums in confectionery products, and so much of the building into the mixing of these chocolate wonderful tastes as well.
Mm.
So that way we can. And another thing is like acacia gums or neem gum, for example, neem tree gums, and so bitter in taste, and they are also much used as a as a as a as a for the childs and for the growth and development, and because it's working onto the musculoskeletal system as well, and you can see the energizing, the strengthening the tissues, and then through the nervous system, and then also antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal, and alkalizing, and good for skin diseases.
Mm.
So multiple levels, and we make as a tablet making, because that's the reason why all these gums are also used for
Like a
making the
binding
pill
agent.
formation,
Yeah.
binding agent. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah, because I used to
So
think
gums.
originally with like acacia, it was just kind of in the formula just purely as a binding agent, but it has all these inherent properties in itself. It's good for like the mucous membranes in the body, the stomach. It's easily absorbed. It serves so many functions. You know, they're not
The
just
stambhana, when you say in Ayurveda stambhana, when you say that, what does it mean? Like, what is that amount of this, the mucous epithelial or intestinal, floral, or the delicate secretions which are coming through from these micro units, including the endocrine system, how much it has to be released? That's the control. This is what stambhana means. Like the protein agglutinations under the mucous epithelial tissue, the protein agglutinations is allowing, restricting the amount of the flow which has to come out from that. So exocrine, endocrine regulation of these secretions can also be understood from these wonderful gummy resinous substances which are aromatic in the brain. Yeah.
so it's sort of staying on the gum theme. We might as well just let's look at asafoetida quickly. So
Yeah, so another wonderful
this
gum. Yes, and Sahasrabhiti, when he said that, if you store this in thousand layers when it's being covered with this pure asafoetida, still it smells back. And, wonderful way to understand the purity of these another essences coming through, like with the musk, for example. It's a precious, being much used in cosmetics from the animal point of view.
Mm,
But testing this musk is also done when the musk is pierced with a needle, and the aroma which it carries for a longer period of time, and then put into this asafoetida.
mm,
And if this musk does not lose its smell, and the way two substances are outnumbering the content and intensity of the smell. So when you roast it in the ghee and used for uh, how much is that condiments into the home kitchen, the flavor prepared
mm,
with the seasoning of the spices along with this asafoetida,
mm,
because antispasmodic efficacy and premenstrual tensions, and that's the way the lower abdominal functions are being restored very well.
mm,
That is most important for anti-spasmodic, anti-inflammatory, anticholinergic, the pain and pressure tensions are being relieved. From sensory point of view, to the smooth muscle relaxant efficacy for its enormous functions for the woman's health as well. The asafoetida is, and as I said, that the waste is being eliminated out is also
So it's like a
discrimination.
prana. It's a sort of balancing the
Yeah,
downward moving prana. So there was actually just a couple of good, just to go back on what you said there. So basically, as a way of determining whether musk, pure musk is to dip it, is to put a bit of musk into the asafoetida, and then you should still be able to smell the musk. Is that
smell the musk.
right?
Yes,
I got
yes,
it. So
yes.
you're using two really super strong
Super strong
substances, but that's
aromas.
a way to get its purity if it even can overcome. I get it. Yeah, that's really interesting. A friend of mine got a some musk for me, and it was a fake basically. He paid quite a lot of money for it, but
That's
it turned out there was a plant that had, it's called musk plant or something. It's got a sort of similar kind of smell, and they basically pack it into the remains of the gland. They have these glands, and then they're cut, they open them, then the proper musk is removed, and then they pack it with this vegetable plant material, and then of course it
yeah.
retains some of that smell, but it's not actually the genuine.
So yeah, the sack itself for carrying that intense smell was in the trains also when you're traveling, this tribal folklore woman carrying these and the smell must go all the way into the compartment, you look to buy it.
Mm,
But that's another way. As you said, Abelmoschus muscatus as a species, a plant origin, Lata Kasturi. And they said it's a plant kasturi. So
mm,
the similar kind of aroma scent is present in those seeds is also much used in health perspective from Ayurveda,
mm,
from the herbal point of view. So this aroma is another important collective, whether it is plant-based or gums and resins or from animal point of view, that's musk or similar substances. So they are actually the higher sensory cortical brain nervous system because the brain is the most important. Next is the heart. So the heart and brain and both the health as a means of restoration through from somatic point of view or from sensory point of view, smelling is also very important. That's the reason we use in the scents as well, because that's the way the pleasantness coming through from these musk scent preparations.
mm,
And it's also healthy if it's a pure. That should be the case.
mm.
Otherwise, there's so much substances are also being found from this Agnijara, and the amber is
I was just
also
going to
another
say, like
coming through.
the ambergris, isn't it? Ambergris, they're from the sperm whales. Yeah, it's that again. It's that very highly. I mean, the perfume industry loves it. It's very.
Yeah, other thing is they are just capable of eliminating the blockages, for the is this what the coronary blockages, for example. Even the musk is such an intense smell. If it is
Mm,
such a pure, you start this nasal congestion immediately. Even sometimes sensitive nose start bleeding.
mm.
That is the way. So the blockages are being relieved out of the circulation with these small, tiny amounts of these
Would
musk
you say that that's
preparations.
more? You say asafoetida is more like alpana prana and downward. Is that musk more kind of upward eliminating, or?
Yes, it's because of this fierce, intense aroma and substances with the fiery and everything moves upwards only.
Mm,
That's the way. Because fire moves upwards, and similarly in the metabolism as well. That's what is an upward is like more the heart, lung, brain, which are sensory areas. It above diaphragm is that most the strength. This is something like upside root. We are human beings are considered as symbolic like a root upside down as a root as a plant because
mm,
our roots are on top rather than ground deep down ground it we are the branches or the extremities. So when you make this root strong and then above that from there's organ systems getting more stronger and
mm,
then every part of the body thrives very well. That is the sequence. So this fire as a fiery substances from this aroma into the helping into this higher cortical brain to the nervous sensory means and then the cardiac strength and removing this cardiac blockages
mm,
and that way is wonderful.
mm.
But then you can also see certain similar kind of aroma present consequently being tested in the garlic as well. Now you see the differences with the garlic is also such an intense smell is there
Mm,
and this intense smell how it is different because one way, when we look from the somatic perspective, as a garlic has a nutrient value when it is being prepared with different food substances, is helping to improve digestive functions and digestive fire
Mm,
from this, and also giving strength to this upper part of the body, the cardiac strength or the nervous system, and everything is.
mm,
But then coming to the clarity into the sensory mind level, the highest sattva quality enhanced by these aromatic substances rather than the garlic.
mm,
That is the reason why the garlic and onion is some certain times we have like a vegan divide of these dairy products or even the animal products. The honey is also not taken by. So similarly, the garlic and onion, the creating the sense of the sensory mind executions. For example, like speech.
mm,
When we talked about licorice, it is enhancing the kantya, the voice, the speech is getting clear and clear. For
mm,
example, another aromatic substance, Acorus calamus. Acorus calamus does grow in UK as well,
mm,
which is called vacha. And
mm,
vachalatvakaram viti vacha means like which enables you, udanavata. This is udanavata. So udanavata, when it is getting purified, the speech and sound and swara, everything comes out as an expression. So the mind, verbal, physical activities. So something is giving a physical strength into the musculoskeletal system like the garlic, but other way it is not giving the strength for your sensory wellness of this, programming, for example, and then the speech, and then the articulation, or the phonetics, or the spells. That's the sound has a vibration, and into the mind as well. When you say that how the mind, whether it is the desirous mind to the spiritual point of view or the carnal desires, for example. That way is the difference you can say to both the aromatic substances,
mm.
helping through making strong physical level or mental level.
There's just too much to look at, really. So, like, how about stuff like the galls? I was quite interested in the galls. So, like the Mayaphala or the Karkatashringi, these sort of
Yeah,
roots that appear on trees. I remember when we did a herb walk in near where I live. There's
true.
tropical, subtropical gardens, and you were pointing at a lot of the trees and saying, "Oh, all the galls," And I thought, "Oh yeah, I remember them as a kid. They were just curiosities, but I'm not really attaching any medicinal benefit to them." But then I did a little bit more research on it. Sort of fascinating. These are like natural. It's usually where the tree's been invaded by an insect or something like that, or a fungal attack, and the tree produces this ball and sort of surrounds it, and it ends up like a hard, woody sort of, well, like myophyllum. It's like a false fruit, isn't it? It looks like a fruit, but it's not.
Yeah, when the trees see the even if you a small injury to the plant or trees, and the gums and resins start, secreting
Mm,
as a means of self healing,
mm,
and similarly when the self protection and self healing as a means, and then symbiotic life as microbes, maybe even the corals, the corals are growing out of these house animal houses. So similarly, the by symbiotic life or the plants when they are sharing the values, and then the plant reacting or from the leaves or different parts of this Pistacia, Integerrima, Pistacia, I mean like Karkatashringi, Saxidenia, or different species are being grown onto this selective Anacardiaceae family or Pistacia plants, or why is it different? Because of this astringent property.
mm,
Astringent is another important thing which is very significantly, we talked about stambhana, and
mm,
also we talked about certain aspects when it is mentioned the bitterness when it is dominating into these galls, then it is being heavy. The heaviness comes out as an earth element predominates.
mm,
Earth element predominates in the kashaya rasa or astringent substance. So one way it is a wind element, another way it is a earth element. When you see this Ayurvedic terminology coming from space, wind, fire, water, earth,
mm,
then then you see the conjunctions of these elemental predominance. The wind is upward movement as an atmosphere, or it just moves upwards, and then like a airy, and then the earth is down to gravity.
Mm.
And both the principles, when they are working into the same taste, that is working as a counter elements of restoration, counter element of restoration. So whether it is upward or 360 degrees, these micro capillary activities connected with the circulation. So
Mm.
this is blood when it is circulating, and then this transmission is being restored by these stambhana properties. So
Mm.
this is what stambhana means. So whether it is hemostatic, hemostatic kind of a stambhana when you're talking for the excess blood or clotting mechanism to the point of view you're talking, or you are talking about that restricting that excessive secretion should not come out. So anything which diarrhea, for example,
Mm.
diarrhea is lose motions. So because excess of water is being drained and it forcibly is being eliminated out, then you need to control it.
Mm.
So similarly, the health of these substances by little typical aroma is also used in multiple pediatric formulations. Gana Kana Visha Shrungi, Karkatashringi, because of its anti-toxicity
Mm.
and antidote, and as well as healing or restorative, and also for the respiratory, because that's a similar way like respiratory point of view, the bronchus and bronchioles, and then the anastomosis capillary taking place into those, and they need this kind of stability restorations for excess fluids are being not to accumulate into this bronchiectasis or
Mm.
pneumonia. So in such a way, where these capillaries anastomosis taking place, the activity of these astringent substances in Ayurveda
Mm.
and coming through from these galls, and which are much being used,
Mm.
as you said, Mayaphala, Quercus, and these are also they're just taking the stone paste after this 1 year of the new life, grinding these herbs and paste, and one of these ingredients are also being stone pelled, and the paste is being administered for the pediatric health as well. So
Mm.
the tummy health, digestive and restoration, and for the respiratory or excess kapha, because it's a
Mm.
kapha age for the children, and then the kapha accumulations when it is too much, then to reduce it in a
Mm.
way. So these galls are working in wonderfully
Mm.
as an energy restorative.
If you break myophyllum and look inside, it's a super dense, woody kind of solid structure, but the Karkatashringi is more like a long
Trunk,
protrusions
yes.
grow, and it's hollow, but it's very, very hard. It's like literally horns, isn't it, or crab's claws growing on the trees. So structurally they're different, but energetically they're very similar. Both sort of high in tannin, super astringent. So these are being. How would you use them mostly? Is it but like external application ointments, or would it be more internal decoction, or?
Yeah, depends on species as well. External applications as a means of into this liniment preparations, for example, for the constrictions as to take place, like the wound healing properties, and wound healing properties are also from the astringent point of view in
Mm.
Ayurveda. So panchavalkalas when we use, and then decoctions prepared and irrigations and cleansing, so that this granulation tissue has to be grown or debris is being relieved out as a wound externally, what we can see that dead stuff is removed. Similarly in physiology as well, and as the internally when it is being used, it is capable of eliminating the waste material toxicities out and reduce inflammations indirectly in that way.
Would I be right in saying as well that they actually seed certain? So there seems to be, I mean, from the basic research I did, they'll seed the trees with this particular fungus or this growth. So like peepal is a popular tree, mango is a popular tree, Bodhi tree, all those sacred like Ashokas, all those are sacred trees. They'll try and get those growths because then it pulls some of the properties of that tree to be, if you, it's like
Yes,
being, it's like the lac, the lac beetle. So they
black.
put them on certain trees to get certain types of properties. Although it's all lac, the secretions of the insect, but the tree that they fed on will add its own medicinal value. So is that the same for those galls?
Yeah, we can definitely say yes. Laksha Sandhanakaram Sandhaniyam. So Sandhana is that word which is even the honey, for example, because it's a floral extract.
Mm.
Honey is a coming different type of floral floral essence which is coming out collected by bees, and that's also considered as a kashaya predominant.
Mm,
even though it's a sweet as a honey, but then the astringent is behind it, and which is being conjoining because broken tissues, wear and tear process is being minimized,
mm,
and that's where the and then minimizing that apoptosis or autoimmune process being maybe prevented by point of view. The cellular awareness is being brought into that, so
mm,
cellular communications are being restored by eliminating these waste materials. Those That's a very restorative and conjoining, and tissue to cell, as different tissues in the body has to be put together, and that is where these astringent as a taste
mm.
substances which are being used in Ayurveda.
I
So
never
it's
thought about that. But what about what was the traditional way of farming bees? In India, did they do it? Did they find trees and kind of seed them with colonies, or did they just look for natural ones? Or I remember when I was in Sri Lanka, the Veda people in the sort of central area, they were highly prized for their honey, but they had like secret places where they went to get this stuff, and they had certain
exactly,
where these certain
exactly.
trees grew. But I mean, how was it done traditionally? And let's say 100 years ago in India, how would they be?
The honey, which was, yeah, I mean, like it was collected naturally because the bees are using to be. There are 8 types of honey Ayurveda being considered, and Pautikam, Lagavam, Kshaudram, and all these based on this bee sizes or the collection and consistency of the honey. The dense forests in the past, and then the natural collection of these we have and being collected by, but it's not being cultivated in the past. No.
Yeah, because obviously these days everything's commercialized. I mean, even the sort of Western model of the boxes where they have these tiered boxes and they're all done with we pre-made honeycombs. But I noticed when I was in Germany, they had a whole tradition of using these warre hives, which are basically they don't have then it's a long high hive and they have long honeycombs that go. So it's more traditionally how the bees would prefer to make the honey and the wax. They'll when you actually harvest them, it looks more like a traditional honeycomb rather than being on those nice sections of honey that you can.
Yeah, in the rural areas when we used to practice in India, and then some people used to come with anaphylactic, like people, children who were like shepherds and looking after these cow heads and in the wilderness, they go and collect this honey and squeeze it and then drink it as it is. So with this, all these larvae are present and these micro animals present in it, and it was causing this anaphylactic shock, and
Uh,
suddenly the face is swollen and rashes and breathing difficulty, and they used to come to the clinic with that. But then what it is significant here is as an antigenic substance from honey, as a mixture, as an adjunction of, like whether it is the sugars and minerals and vitamins and proteins and as a mixture of different and then this amalgamation of this honey is a perfect immunomodulation.
mm,
And I don't blame into the cultivation of this honey as long as it is not fed with the sugar syrup. That's a
mm,
mistake. Otherwise, is where is the lavender honey? Lavender flowers are richness in this wild forest honey. Wild flowers are being collected, so they have still their immunomodulating properties by this amalgamation of this. Antigenic, the body mesmerizes with this presence of this honey. That's the way it's become as a yoga vahi in Ayurveda, because it doesn't lose its potency
mm,
and qualities pertaining in it, and carry along with another qualities as it is following through into the bioavailability of the blood.
mm,
And that way, all these therapeutic efficacies are being in the presence of the honey,
mm,
as better absorption, better assimilation, and reaching out into the systemic level. The honey becomes as a vehicle from
mm,
Ayurveda point of view. Even the honey, when you take just on its own, on empty stomach and dissolved with water, and honey water pure, until just cleaning, until you get hungry, you'll not be eating anything as an alkaline diet, is a honey water cleansing. Nothing you
mm.
have to do, but then the health is being restored, rebooted by just having the honey water just dissolved and drinking into the body for a small period of time, like 3 days or maximum 7 days. You'll find a lot of difference into the health restoration. So such a wonderful immunomodulating substance honey is. So whether it is cultivated or it is done from these fields or these available sources of the plants. Portugal honey, some of the bitter honeys, they are also very good, accepted as a health perspective. Ayurveda much used, and there is no expiry for these honeys. Most of the times we see that for time being you have to keep in the stores, and after some time the expiry they have to throw it out. I try to educate many people. Then as the well preserved airtight containers, non-reactive glass or anything, then the honey stays forever. And thus honey becomes more therapeutic, and honey, like the ghee, which is being preserved for years together, like 10 years ghee, and considered to be, then it turns into complete powdery form. That's called madhu sharkara, because it's no more liquidity, it becomes as a crystalline.
So so is that considered better? That's a higher therapeutic value if it's crystallized honey rather than
self dried on its own.
It's funny because in the West we all like it runny, and so they do like low level warming. They'll usually put it in front of a light, like a warm light bulb, to dissolve the crystals and turn it back into a nice soft. So it's actually it's the opposite effect. We should let it crystallize to get better therapeutic value from it.
Yeah, the never honey is being heated, and then never honey is also being used together with any hot substance. That's the way, because that's the reason why it loses its the synergism for this antigenic properties, and from this immunomodulation by recognizing that's the way that shares that quality of this bioavailability for making awareness. Something is a new substance came in, and our defense system get alarmed by that. So that will not be there. Otherwise, just a nutritional substance. Say some of the honey, like say for example in Ayurveda, we have for sandhani, means like for beverages which are prepared from dhataki, woodfordia fruticosa flowers, or maduka indica flowers. So these some of the enriched flowers, naturally they have a more honey prepared, since more honey synthesized in the flowers and started dribbling on its own. So that was the thing. These honey flowers are being collected when the honey is coming out naturally. No bees have to be collected there. So that's the way the classification is being done, how it is being produced, how it is being, based on this consistency, collection, or sizes.
You can see that even today. I mean, areas where they've got commercial bee farming, and if there's like like rapeseed is growing nearby, then the honey has a particular kind of color and a very pungent smell because of the rapeseed that the bees are feeding on. So yeah, it's very reflective of its environment, isn't it? Depending what's growing around that area. But we went a little bit off topic into honey, but I mean, it's still fascinating. It's still actually, could we let's just round up with a bit of an oddity, which I find is a sort of an interesting one. It's the Bichhuphal, which is this dried fruit seed. It's got this very unusual tiger's claw or cat's claw. So I when I was looking up on it, I couldn't find really any real indications other than it was being calcinated. So the seed pods are collected, they're burnt, and then the ash is used medicinally. But have you ever come across any people using it in decoction form or any other part of the plant that's being used? It's just a sort of
it's just used as an anti-inflammatory to the point of internal administrations for respiratory system, or anti-bacterial, antifungal. So external and internal, both the ways, it is considered to be most the pain relieving and then inflammation reducing and systemic level. That's health benefits are being considered for this gas club. So though we have a bit of kakanasa in Ayurveda, it's being said that like the crow's nose kind of growth of this natural. But there are so much of similar substances which are present as a nettle plant is also we can see, and similar immunomodulating substances, external and internal. When you said it's the burning of these pods of this Atmagupta, Kauncha Bija, that's also having this ash value are being dissolved into liniment preparations, oil preparations, or ointment preparations, external wound healing properties to be
Mm.
acquired with those. So similarly, Kakanasa is also being used in Ayurveda for
Mm.
these
Yeah, it's a
purposes. Yeah.
really unusual looking thing. It looks a little bit like a sort of scorpion stinger, or like literally like tiger claws. But well, I noticed that there was a lot of some of the literature I found was talking about it. A lot of it was they were favored to be worn as amulets as well, like protective amulets. So they would dry these seed husks and they would be used in jewelry as well. They had a sort of decorative
Yes,
value,
yes.
like an amulet as well. So which is just
Yeah,
a
in Ayurveda, Kantaka Panchamulas are being mentioned that where these thorny things which are being used as an ornamental basis. So, yeah, because there is some sense maybe for this touching, I mean, how their collection with the water treatments, when you bathe, with these herbs present in it, and so that could be some sort of benefits which as an amulets being used in Ayurveda as well. So
Mm.
as we are wrapping up and then healing into this wound management, similarly for their contact with the body can also be a part of dressing as a healing substances, as you mentioned,
Anti
amulets.
sort of like bites as well, anti snake bites, insect bites could applied externally as a stringent to stop bleeding as
Yes,
well, or
yes, 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 yes,
uh,
yes. Disinfectant and as well as healing, helping, and antifungal, and yeah, this could be for skin health as well. Yes.
amazing. Well, look, it's we've come to the end of our time, Dr. Josh. Thank you very much for coming back and discussing these things. Fascinating. I mean, you can literally just pick any herb and find something interesting about it. I remember one of the when I was studying back in the late 90s when I first started studying Ayurveda, the one of the first things that we had to do as a sort of go away at the end of the class and was just pick a herb and find something interesting about it and come back and present it to other students. And I was amazed once you started reading the books, you thought actually it's not just, there's so many applications for this and you can always find something interesting about any of them. So I'd encourage people to really go out and take a deeper look and work with a lot of these plants. The most important thing is to work with them and actually experience them firsthand and just sort of experience their magic, really. So if people want to get hold of you, what's the best way I mean, obviously you're teaching, you're doing classes. So what are you offering at the moment? Are people able to do, if they want to study with you, how would they go about that?
Yeah, recently we had an international conference held on June 2nd and 3rd in London, and then the Bob Blackman and Virendra Sharmaji, the MP, was 3 years, 3 times, and then he supported for us. And so we look forward for that, and we are conducting online courses as well with our website, Association of Ayurveda Academy UK Limited. Yes, yes, interested people can come and learn. It's a wonderful science. It's a lifetime science. Every time you know something to new to learn. It's never ending learning process in Ayurveda is so wonderful to study. And we are also trying to integrate and bring this outsourcing of this BMS curriculum into the rest of the world. So already Ayush Ministry has designed the programs to outsource this. We are trying to reinstate this university curriculum to be accepted for Ayurveda in this country as well. So we are trying for that. So
Probably the
wonderful.
best thing is I'll put up the link to your Ayurveda, your Croydon
Yeah,
Ayurveda website, and then
website.
there's a contact page on there, so you can contact Dr. Joshi and get more information if you're interested in learning more about this, and also speak to him. And you're doing consultations still? Are you still doing consultation?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
just
so you
still
can
doing
see
that.
Dr. Joshi. It's an amazing experience. Or just maybe you want to engage him one to one and just learn from him. He's just a walking library of information. So I'd highly recommend getting in contact. So yeah, so thank you again, Dr. Joshi, and talk to you
Namaste.
again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Namaste.